Just introduce these guys. We are joined today by the lovely Justin and Ollie Milner. These guys from DSM Systems are some of my nearest and dearest. We've worked on quite a few projects together at this point, and I actually reached out to these guys when we needed some specialist screen kit for the office. So hopefully we'll have a nice, interesting session. Hopefully everybody gets out of something out of it, and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. But to start things off, why don't we talk a little bit about DSM Systems and start with the basics? Who are you guys and what do you do?
Thank you very much for the intro, Les. We are DSM are an IT managed service provider. We are based in the southwest of the UK. For those of you lucky enough to know Chippenham, that is more specifically where our office is. We've been going now for just over 20 years. And as some of you may have noticed, Justin and I share the same surname. So yes, we are a family-run business, luckily for both of us. And our customer base is typically SMEs of up to around 100 staff members. And in terms of location, it is predominantly based in the southwest. We are very much southwest focused, with the majority of our customers being in this area. As I say, family-run business, and we're very proud of kind of our customer-orientated approach. We pride ourselves very much on our long-standing relationships with our customers, a lot of which we've been working with each other for the duration of our existence. And you could argue we are relatively old-fashioned in the fact that a lot of our new business comes from gaining referrals, as I say, building that trust up with our current clients, and they refer us on. So yeah, in that sense, you could argue we're a bit old-fashioned.
It's the right kind of business to be in, though. I've had a lot of fun in those kind of industries. So, of course, we talk a lot because you work with Synology products, but I understand you have quite a few strings to your bow. So what other products and services can you offer anybody who's listening?
Yeah. We don't just specialize in surveillance. There is a wide variety of products and services that we offer and we specialize in. Such as on-site, off-site support and management, whether that be server support on and off-premise. We run a help desking system where we have ticketing in place. We also look at telephony, backup, storage, email security, and actually a large part of what we do is networking for our customers. So the installation, the maintenance of networking and their networks. We've also been involved in a few key fiber projects recently. And when it comes to the networking side of things, we find that we use and we stick with kind of a few specific vendors, such as Zygel and MikroTik. We find that these two vendors kind of fit hand in hand with our clients, and actually suit their needs perfectly in terms of the size and the job that they need, really. So yeah, there's as I say, a wide
Plenty
variety
of strings to your bow there.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
I'll just mention as we go through, if you're watching the slides, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the QR codes. Just scan that if you want a direct link to DSM's website. We've also pinned it in the pinned comment, and we'll have that up on display towards the end. But that's what you do. Who do you do it for? How many customers do you work with, and sort of what sort of size businesses do you typically target?
Yeah, so as previously mentioned, it is SMEs. We have around 12 to 15 key accounts, all of which range in size and complexity. But anywhere between these 12 to 15, anywhere between 10 and 100 employees. So we do actually have a few smaller clients, which we offer kind of a more bespoke service to. We do get the odd person come up to us and ask for something slightly different, which we always try and cater to their needs. And they do come from a wide range of industries. Could be anything from property management. Obviously, Justin's going to probably touch on it and elaborate a bit more in further down the line in the webinar. But obviously, being Southwest based, being where we are in relatively rural surroundings, we deal with a few estates, and obviously these throw different challenges, all of which different complexity levels, but very interesting. There are also a few instances where we deal with the odd extremely high net worth individual, which again is can throw a spanner in the works, but nothing that we're not comfortable with and happy to help.
I mean, you're at that sort of that size where you work with businesses where maybe they can't have their own IT team, or their IT team is looking to migrate some of the services across to. That's kind of what I was doing before I joined as a Synology lead myself.
Yeah.
And the thing with that kind of work, it's a lot of fun, but you're always with that many customer systems that you're working with. You're always looking for ways to manage the bulk of it. So with that in mind, what in particular, what sort of tools do you use to help with the management of your customer systems, and what tools are you familiar with?
Yeah. Obviously, dealing with different vendors, there's got to be a variety of different tools that we do need put in place to manage our systems. And a lot of them are vendor specific tools. Firstly, we deal hugely and use Server Manager a lot for our customers. However, we are moving over and migrating these over to the Windows Admin Center. As touched upon before, when it comes to networking, using Zyxel offer a really good product called Nebula, which is a portal management system. So when it comes to routing, switching, Wi-Fi, allows us to run updates, troubleshoots, all remotely. And then obviously this is relatively similar with the one and only, I've got to mention it, the Synology Active Insight from NAS.
How'd you get on with it?
So again, it's a brilliant product, of course. A bit similar to the Nebula portal. So anything from real-time monitoring, resource analysis, diagnostics, troubleshooting, saves huge amounts of time. Customers are often blown away that we can find out a specific problem and fix, having not to go on site, which is it's always nice. You feel slightly lucky, and you feel a bit of you're like, oh yeah, we can fix it.
When you've got when you've got a stack of like 30-40 things to get through the day, not having to go to every single individual site is a bit of a game changer.
Exactly,
but yeah, just glad you're feeling that you're getting the worth out of it. All of the free devices, yeah, it's good to hear that that it is being used quite well in the field. So beyond sort of the Active Insight and the stuff that you're doing at the moment, you guys have got quite a history with Synology, as I understand it. It predates me by a little bit. So how long have DSM Systems been working with Synology products?
Ollie, I'll jump in here because of my history.
You've probably
age.
got slightly more experience in this field.
Slightly more years as well. I guess let's answer your question. We've used your Synology products for at least 10 years now, and I have to say we've probably got one or two products which are 10 years plus old out there still in the field.
I mean, we just come back from BET, and I mean, as a sales guy, we've got to point out the warranty. If it's a critical system, obviously you probably want to keep it in warranty. But no, we hear about systems that have gone sort of 10, 15 years out in the field, and it is just nice to hear from people who've still got them chugging away, because they are pretty reliable.
Yeah, chugging away is the expression. I guess when we first started using you guys, we was very much for sort of SME type. File share, file storage type basis for the smaller end of the customer base. But over time, we begin to use Synology products for more and more intensive requirements. A few years ago, we started using block-based storage from some of your bigger products, typically for things like backup, not production, but backup at the time. And then we've now moved to using things like Windows, Active Business backup for servers and PCs quite extensively.
Active backup for business, yeah.
Yeah. And we've got some 365 customers on that as well. And I would say also with Active Business for backup, we started to replace our ArcServe UDP server backup infrastructure with Synology Active Business Backup. It's a good product, works well, so why not use it?
It's included free of charge. There might be a few sort of features that could be added further down the line, but most of what you'd need, whether it's sort of backing up 365 or just backing up local devices, or backing up device to device or to the cloud or wherever you want to do it, it's nice just to be able to offer that to you guys sort of free of charge.
Yes, and the recent release of it has really upped the ante on it as well.
Oh, yeah, glad to see that that you're making use of the tool set that's on the box. I mean, when you are in that position where the customers are just looking for you to get backups, it is like a pretty good sort of value add that I think, and it's good to hear that you're making the most of that. Cool. So let's sort of move towards surveillance, which is of course my specialism a little bit more. You guys approached us and you said that you prefer to work with Synology whenever possible with surveillance. And I'll be honest, that's kind of unusual. We usually work with people who either sell a little bit of Synology, or people who have sort of a very sort of mixed bag. You guys are a true believers, as it were, like myself. And I just want to ask a bit more about that. Why do you guys prefer to work with us for surveillance over insert other company name here?
Well, I guess a few reasons really. One of which is because we know the products well now. We've been dealing with an awful long time, and we've implemented. We sort of added on surveillance to the existing infrastructures we've had out there, which has been very effective. So that's been one of the reasons why even when we get a surveillance-led inquiry, surveillance or CCTV inquiry, we tend to lead with Synology surveillance, and we traditionally use the NAS products with third-party cameras, but clearly the introduction of Synology branded cameras has made our life far easier in terms of implementation as also procurement. So that's been a very, very welcome addition. The other thing, I think, because Ollie touched on it, we're a bit of an old-fashioned company, and we have a sort of fairly strong ethical and security focus within our life, in terms of our working life. So we wanted to move. We didn't want to basically be utilizing vendors. We were uncomfortable with the ethics or the security behind it, and we find that with Synology, we don't have any of those problems at all. So that's given us a great deal of comfort, and I think it's quite a solid sales proposition to our customer base, who, as we talked about, are traditionally fairly traditional companies, high net worth individuals, high net worth companies. So they feel comfortable with our Synology-led proposition. And I would also say the other thing about it is we've always liked the fact that because we come from a networking and an IT background, we're very comfortable with the level of redundancy we can build into Synology products. So we can either build highly redundant, highly available CCTV services for people, or if someone's budget's a bit more constrained, okay, it'll be less redundant.
Nice range, yeah.
So that's good. And not being a dedicated CCTV company, we like to try and keep the number of vendors we deal with in terms of keeping our knowledge requirements under control, and be comfortable with us, have a better in-depth knowledge of a fewer set of products. Always makes us more comfortable.
Cool. So my next question, how did you initially determine that Synology was, the best option for your customers?
As talked about before, we're very comfortable with Synology as product. We like Surveillance Center. We think it's got a very good range of features and services, features and products within it. There's very few things we feel uncomfortable, we can't meet the customer's requirements with it. So that is traditionally our lead in Synology when it comes to CCTV with customers. And we get good support from you guys, good support from distribution. Product availability is good. Knowledge-based articles are really good in terms of implementation and support moving forward. And some of the other reasons I touched on in your last question, Les, is that's why we lead with Synology.
Thank you. Of course, we can't cover all of the bases. So do you work with any other products alongside our surveillance suite?
Yeah, I mean, we find times where, let's say, we now predominantly try and focus on Synology cameras, but there are some times when your camera range isn't great, isn't huge at the moment.
I'm going to interrupt you there just for a moment. Just for people watching, we do have a new range. I'm actually allowed to talk a little bit about it now. So this year you can expect a ceiling-mounted fisheye camera. We have we have a wireless Wi-Fi camera, and we have a direct-to-cloud Wi-Fi free camera, and we also have a larger bullet camera with zoom functionality. So that's 4 new cameras that are coming this year, and hopefully that's going to alleviate some of those scenarios for you guys. But sorry for interjecting there. I just wanted to share the news while it was hot.
No, that's useful, Les. Yeah, that'll be good. I mean, we'll a bigger camera range will be great, because that will mean we have to use third-party cameras less, which will be great. As talked about before, we come from we're an IT background, so big focus on our lives is networking, being switching, routing, and Wi-Fi. So we basically always our proposal is basically focused around utilizing the network and hanging services on that, whether they be voice, data, or CCTV. So part of our proposition is around the networking and the networking support and the overall support of the implementation. And we try and wrap that up as a service to a customer. So we'll provide them the help desk functionality, the network support, the CCTV support, everything in one.
Fantastic. When you approach a customer to recommend the service, do you find any obstacles to the deployment?
I guess I'd sort of step back from that, Les, a bit, in terms of, I find one of the biggest challenges we have is to make sure we're talking to the right people in the company. I know for any resellers out there, I don't know if you find, but traditionally the CCTV, like the voice was traditionally in the past, potentially not dealt with by the IT people or your potential normal contacts, but dealt with by the property or the facilities management type of function. So, one or two times we've just discovered we've gone a long way down a proposition, long proposal, and just found out we're not really talking to the right people, which has been a challenge. So make sure you talk to the right people and you can get the right messages over to them if you're trying to sell to them. And the other thing we do focus very much around is this concept of this shared network. So we try and make sure we're trying to sell services upon the shared network, one of which is the CCTV, and secondly, voice. And the other challenge we've had in the past, as one we talked about many times, Les, is the simple things like mounts. And we think we've now resolved the problem, but
I will be honest. Justin is now the foremost expert in the country for mounting solutions for Synology after several conversations that we've had. As I said, we've got 4 new cameras coming out this year, but I want next year to be the year of accessories if it's up to me, which it isn't, but I'll be pushing for that, behind the scenes.
Yeah, mounts are a silly little thing, and they're not technology related at all, but when it comes to installation, they are fairly critical, to be honest with you. So it's great we've now managed to source some.
Fantastic. So again, we've sort of spoken about leveraging the solution against other traditional solutions, and not always speaking to the people that you'd usually speak to, your IT teams, depending on the business, of course. To that end, we find the same thing at our level. It can be difficult when you're competing against somebody who's used to selling analog cameras, doesn't really know much about IP, and we really find that seeing is believing. I'm a true believer. I really am. I come off camera and I'm exactly the same in the office about how mad I am about the stuff. And really, I think the more people that see it, the better. So if you're watching and if you're wondering, is this for you? Is it not for you? We can offer test and buys through DSM or through ourselves. Just reach out. We'd love to send kit out and see what you think about it. But when you're having that conversation, when you're when you're pitching a managed solution, are there any other of our solutions that you leverage in the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Not only in the conversation, actually, it's in reality we find. And I think a lot of the challenge we have is with our customers, they don't necessarily know entirely what their needs are, and they don't know what their needs will change in the next couple of years, or next couple of months in some cases. So an example is recently we've got one of our existing customers in the UK gave us about a month's notice that we were having a Polish warehouse and a large warehouse as well. This was a new venture for all of us, for them, for us, everything. And they were going to have a handful of staff there, but things like CCTV was critical because it was going to have some very high value equipment on site. So we basically implemented an RS1221, which is our RP Plus, which is a rack-based solution predominantly for the CCTV. But we very soon discovered that when we were out there, we needed some additional DNS functionality to route the traffic back into the UK over across VPN. So we just ran up DNS services on the Synology box, and that resolved that problem nicely. But, so just an example of unpredictable stuff comes along, and you can use the product in different ways. Very soon, about 2 or 3 weeks later, we discovered that they wanted to sort of treble the amount of staff on site. So then we put in a read-only domain controller. So we spun up a Synology Virtual Machine Manager, implemented a read-only domain controller, and then extended the domain out to a Polish warehouse.
And I mean, that's sorry to cut you off there, but as I say, like I used to work in a similar outfit to yourselves before I worked for Synology. For smaller businesses, if you've got double digits worth of staff as opposed to triple digits, if you just need some simple functions, DNS, DHCP, maybe a VM to run some light applications, it's night and day going to be cheaper to run it on a NAS than it is on a full application server.
Yeah, we found not only cheaper, it was quicker and easier as well, because I could do all this from sitting in the office in Chippenham, which I tell you was because this particular warehouse in Poland, there are only flights there back once a week, so you're out there for a week, which there are different things in life I really want to do. And then the customer then decided that they'd have another warehouse. This was about a month later. With more cameras, so we basically put a radio shot into the other side, more cameras, and with things like camera discovery and firmware management, we didn't even need to go to site. We just got a local contractor, put the cameras up, pointing in the right direction, and then we did all the adoption and setup remotely. It was such an easy solution to do remotely, which I think with other vendors would have been very challenging.
That does sound like a very easy way to manage an overseas installation. So from that and other situations, it sounds like you've learned quite a few ways to simplify it. Do you have any tips or things that you consider when you're putting together a solution that might help anybody else who's looking towards Synology?
Yeah, there's a few things I thought about there in terms of number one is persuade your customers, implement a shared infrastructure. So implement a network, a really good, strong, managed, cloud managed preferably, network backbone in which you can run multiple services on, all segmented and nice and secure and safe. And that just increases the flexibility, reduces the customer's overall costs, makes life far easier to implement and deploy services on it. And also far easier to manage as well. And you'll end up with one good managed infrastructure rather than 3 average ones, and we still come across customers, come across them every day, which you walk in the door and they have a CCTV network, they have a TV, they have a phone network, they have a data network. And you generally find the CCTV and the telephone network are on very poor network infrastructure. And that's just, I don't know why people do it, vendors do it, but they do it. Anyway, there we go. And in terms of other tips would be, there's some really good tools on the Synology website, things like the NVR Selector and Array Calc tools.
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I mean, they're based on exactly the same math that we use in the solutions team behind the scenes to calculate the enterprise scale projects. They are really, really powerful for anybody who just wants a rough estimate and should point you to the right products.
Yeah. So again, if it's anything complex, we will get a Les, because he's the expert on these things. But if it's if it's simple, if it needs to be simple and quick, we'll just go to those tools. And they'll provide you a selection of products which will fit the customer's requirements, either rack-based or desktop-based solutions, whichever suits you. And the other key tip is things, use Active Insight. It's free, up to 3 host machines. It's a very, very, very good monitoring services. So it'll tell you if you've got issues with things like disks becoming unreliable, storage space running out, users logged in at peculiar times of the day for security risks and stuff. Really, really good product. Just check out Synology's website and log in. Simple as that. The other tip is think about using Synology drives. You can use in most of the products either Synology drives or drives from the key normal manufacturers you go to. The Synology drives are more expensive. Let's be honest about this.
One can test it.
Yeah. But they do give you the ability to things like upgrade the firmware on the fly.
Yeah, so, I mean, firstly, I want to interject and say we aren't paying Justin anything to say this, coming from a vendor. But yeah, at the BET show last week, which is an education show for anyone who hasn't heard of it, we had our 60 bay HT 6500, the monster, on the table before us, and really the added value of the drives, not just the performance, not just the increased reliability that we've got metrics for. But when you have a device like that, you've got 60 drives plugged into it, and you can update the firmware directly from the kit without pulling them out one at a time and plugging them in. I think, at that point, there is extra value to be had from the drives while we're talking about them. But nice point to segue. We're talking about the things that we like here, and I think that's probably a good question to ask you guys is, what is your favourite feature?
Les, I do want to say we've got one particular favourite feature. We just like the overall sort of mix, to be honest with you. There's things like Storage Manager, which is the ability to configure different types of RAID on the system, the ability for the system to be used for multiple services effectively, whether it be backup storage repository and CCTV same time. Like Surveillance Center Client, customers like that. It's very easy to use, simple, intuitive. Things like the camera discovery, camera firmware upgrade. We've talked also around drive firmware upgrade as well, which it's a cracking thing to do if you've got a problem. You really can't pick one. I would just reiterate to people, use Active Insight. You can get up to 3 hosts on it for no charge. It is tremendously
even if you put
useful.
that on your 3 most critical pieces of infrastructure, it's worth taking advantage of that feature. It'll help you out.
Yeah. So can't really pick one, Les.
Well, thank you all the same. Okay, well, I don't want to be accused of just asking easy questions the entire time. So let's pick on something a little bit more complicated. Can you tell me about one of your more complicated implementations, how you pulled it off, and if there was anything to learn from that might help people listening?
Yeah, I think Ollie, this is one you and I worked on, Les, before.
Yes.
Ollie intimated originally that we deal with some large estates. So there's one we've been dealing with for about 15 years now. It's a very large estate. And at the centre of it is a Grade 1 listed house. or listed home, stately home, I would say. And traditionally, that's always been, had no internet to it. About 6 years ago, literally had a 1 megabit connection in one of the rooms, and that was it. And this house was lived in. So back in 2018, we installed a VDSL network, which basically is the same technology that OpenReach used to use. That's what's being replaced by fiber to the premise now, but used to use to provide VDSL services, which was like, those 80/20 networking services you used to get, or you still can get. So we basically installed one of these, it's called a DSLAM, or a couple of DSLAMs in the cellar of this place, and connected it up to a telephone cabling system. And the telephone phone system was put in the 1980s. So in terms of telephone cabling, relatively modern, actually. Bear in mind how old some of the OpenReach stuff is out there. And that basically managed to provide pools of internet or pools of Wi-Fi connectivity throughout the house. And we did that in about 2018. But it was challenging because it ran out of capability. Customers' requirements are growing all the time. Big issues about when customers wandered from location to location, everything dropped off in terms of the Wi-Fi. And it was unmanageable. So if we ever had a problem, it was a needle in a haystack. It would take you days to try and troubleshoot the smallest of issues. So about a year ago, we started to implement a 10 gig fiber network throughout the building. Yeah, quite an upgrade. Yeah, and the idea behind that was that this was going to be something which would last for the next 25 plus years, on which they could run all the Wi-Fi, the voice, the CCTV, heating controls, and things like AV for events and stuff like that. So it was as you can imagine, quite a big upgrade. And as I've talked about, one of the services we're going to run was the CCTV on that. So we need to understand, what was a sensible CCTV service to run on that network for them. They had an old analog system where the camera quality was extremely poor. The cameras kept failing. It really was time it went. And the other challenges with the customer, but it was difficult. We didn't really know exactly what they wanted in terms of features, how big the service would be. So it was really important for us. We implemented something that was going to be fit for purpose today and also scalable, because we know that in time they're going to want more cameras. They're going to want cameras in different physical locations. So the ability to scale up the service quite dramatically. And also we think in future they might want more sophisticated analytics on it as well. So the ability to do things like facial recognition on certain cameras and stuff. So we were very, very keen that we proposed to them what was going to be flexible and meet their requirements, because as I said, this is a customer we've had a long-term relationship with. And we view ourselves in a fairly consultative-led approach. So it was important that we didn't just sell them something cheap or something that was going to be just what they wanted now. It was something that was going to be scalable.
Certainly, it's something that we can help with. Yeah.
So Synology seemed like a natural fit. And because it's a house, we didn't have any dedicated rack space. We needed something which physically fit in the locations as well. So we implemented a DS1823 XS Plus with, I think, the largest Synology drives they implement at the moment. And actually, I think we've only half populated that with drives. So there's lots of expansion ability for that to go forward. The other thing we utilise that for is we ran up a little Debian VM on it, which runs the session border controller for voice services on site. And also we're backing up one or two of the key PCs on site using Active Backup for Business. Moving forward, also we're going to the estate office is a bigger location with about 15 people in it, with a couple of servers, and we're going to run Active Business for backup from that over the network to the NAS box as well. So the whole thing makes a lot of logical, a lot of sense, especially as a different physical location. So that suits well. Some of the challenges we had, or main challenge we had around there, is around the fact that it's a Grade 1 listed house. It's got 400 odd rooms. So we have no, cabling was the biggest challenge, but very luckily we worked very closely with the on-site electrician who was a second generation. His dad used to be the electrician on site, so he is now. So they got immense knowledge of all the cable routes. And because the house is occupied, we've got to be very discreet about cabling and implementation of it. And so the cabling contractor basically is running the copper cable into the nearest node, sighting the cameras, similar operation we did in Poland actually. And what our job really there is to design it, do the system configuration, do the management, and do the support of it as well. Okay. So that's been quite a challenge, and it's still ongoing. We've still got a few more cameras to implement, but it's going well.
Cool. Well, it was a pleasure to work with you on that one. Okay, I'm going to ask you guys one more question, and it's a fun one. I'm on a mission, guys, and this applies to everyone in the chat. So if you want to apply a little bit of audience participation, now is your time. I'm on a mission to have more outstanding feature requests than anybody else in Synology Global. I want more surveillance features, and I want to make my voice the loudest, and I want to be the most obnoxious person for our developers. How many solutions have you raised this week? So I'm going to ask you guys as integrators, if I could grant you one new feature, what would it be? What is the single greatest thing I could do to make your lives easier, guys?
Well, Les, I've never agreed. I've never approved of it's just one new feature. So I'm going to be greedy. So as talked about before, love to see a range of camera mounting options from you guys that we could just procure easily as part of the, we knew we were going to work, new high quality. That would be really very useful for us.
Sure. I mean, this is the year of new cameras, but I'm hoping that from next year, I'm certainly pushing behind the scenes to focus on accessories for the next year.
Yeah. The other thing we'd like to see is the camera supporting VLAN tagging.
Okay.
So the ability to sort of out of the box just configure on the camera part of a sort of camera discovery functionality would be to just basically put them on a VLAN and just use VLAN tagging rather than port-based VLANs.
Yeah, okay. So so you can scan for cameras across different subnets and across different VLANs, and you can group them via the NAS that they're connected to. If you have them in a CMS cluster, so you can have 20 cameras connected to one, 20 cameras to the other. But to be able to tag them for permissions and also for management by VLAN, that would be a new feature. But that does sound quite interesting, and I'll see what I can do for you, sir.
That would be lovely.